Okay, the time being 5:30 on the 10th of April, 2024. I call this meeting of the Capital Planning Committee to order. Let's begin with the roll call vote. Pete, aye.
Michael, I.
Wayne, aye.
Chris, I.
All right, announcements. This meeting is being recorded. Anyone intending to make an audio or video recording of this meeting should notify the chair at this time. This committee still has a vacancy for a Kingston resident. If you or anyone else you know may be interested, please reach out to Kingston's Finance Committee. You can reach them by email at fincom@kingstonma.gov. That's fincom@kingstonma.gov. All right, I have another announcement, as I kind of pointed out before, but the presentation of the Board of Selectmen went well last night. They voted unanimously to move our warrant article to the town warrant. Excuse me, later in the meeting, they voted unanimously to support all the projects on the article. Does anyone else have any other announcements? All right, then on to the capital improvement plan, free cash updates. Keith, anything happening, anything else with the capital improvement plan or changes in our free cash amounts?
No, we still have, if everything were to be approved as has been presented in the draft warrant, free cash will be, there will be a remaining free cash balance of, I believe, $1,013,000.
Can you repeat that?
$1,013,000.
That's if this, our warrant goes through.
Every article that has some sort of free cash funding associated with it, all those pass. That's where we end up. And that number is more than it's been over a number of years, I think, except for 1 year.
Now, I think last night you mentioned that the town's rainy day fund was a stabilization account. If in the event somebody, some people are saying, I've heard the word, we should carry 1.5 million. I think you said we've only done that like once.
That's free cash. Yep.
Yeah, if we were, let's say, approaching special town meeting, we were afraid that this number of just over $1 million was going to be already at that point 5 months into the fiscal year, or 5 months from the town meeting, I should say. Could special town meeting make a transfer to free cash if we had to?
Can't make a transfer of free cash.
No, I mean from the
stabilization
to free cash
No, your funding source would be stabilization.
for anything that would have been covered by free cash.
If I'm understanding your question correctly, if there was a need for free cash for some unanticipated emergency after the annual town meeting in May approved the warrant as presented, there could be a special town meeting held where a request for stabilization money could be made to fund whatever that emergency was. There's a higher threshold for approvals. There would need to be an emergency. It's something significant.
I was just curious.
Do you know what the balance of that is?
I believe it's 3.7 million.
Any other updates? No.
Nope.
All right, then we had reconsideration of previously voted recommendations. I know that, we took a vote on the tennis courts project. It was based on sending a sort of a message of priority to the CPC that if they had to choose between the two, they should choose the Wells replacement at Oberchinsky. It's a priority project. So we all voted against the tennis courts. I put this on the agenda in case anybody wanted to, I think you have to make a motion for reconsideration. It's never happened in the time I've been on this committee. I know there's some support for it. I had an issue with the drainage. I'm concerned that may have caused the larger of the cracks on the surface. I think we figured out why most of the other ones are or what's causing them. But we were informed during the initial presentation that the design for the rehabilitation does not make consideration for drainage problems. It could be that there's something else about the design that would handle it, like if they had a very thick bed of gravel underneath or something else. Maybe they determined that crack was not caused by drainage, but usually under asphalt, something like that probably would be. So I had some concerns about supporting it, but was hoping that the recreation director could speak to us, and Paul Basler offered to have a look at the court. I don't know if either one of them sent a message for us.
So the court themselves, obviously the cracks are from, water getting underneath the asphalt and contaminating the soils or gravels underneath the tennis courts. So when they tear those tennis courts up, they would look to reshape and add materials, before they repave, that should, address whatever shortcomings came from the construction of those tennis courts, whenever those occurred.
Now, last night's Board of Selectmen's meeting, it sounded like there was some confusion that that project also included Grace Beach. which
Yeah,
I
I
think-
corrected it, doesn't.
Okay,
There were a couple of different documents, one was in both Grays Beach and Reed, and the other one had just Reed. I checked with the recreation director today, it's just Reed.
well, that vote is, everyone was in the majority on it, so if anybody does want reconsideration, I wanted whatever was gonna go on the warrant to be accurate of what the individual members ultimately believe about the project. I had some concerns that maybe a pipe system or something should be put underneath, or some kind of a gutter or swale around there to collect any water coming down. I think it may actually be subsurface, it probably need perforated pipes. I would hope that the design would cover that, but I'd hate for it to be built and we understand in a few years later that after putting in nearly 150,000, maybe we should have put in another several or 10 or 20 just to stop that from happening. We don't know what will happen, but if anyone wants to change our vote, this is, I think, a good time to make a motion.
Does anybody happen to remember what article this is under? Because this is,
22. It's on page 20 of the warrant. Or it's on page 20 of the warrant that I have. So it should be some 19, 20, 21.
and the funding source for this is CPC, right?
Yes. I mean, and again, I don't want to speak for the street and park superintendent or the recreation director. I'm confident that if there is some sort of drainage improvement that needs to occur there, for this project to be successful long term, it will happen.
Now, is it estimated such that if the contractor gets in there and says, we recommend adding some pipes, do we have some money to cover that?
There's some contingency in that budget. Yes.
Okay,
All right, just to be clear, doing this through CPC means there is no chance that free cash or some other funding source gets taken that's used for overruns.
No.
All right, for
At
discussion,
this point, and I'm sorry, they have $150,000 to do this project. If this were to be approved, they have $150,000. If there's something that goes beyond that,
we got problems?
we have an issue.
All right, for discussion's sake, I'm gonna move reconsideration of this without making a commitment on how I'm gonna vote, but I'm gonna, for discussion's sake, move reconsideration of our recommendation relative to the Community Preservation Fund appropriation to fund the rehabilitation of the Reed Center and Grays Beach Park tennis courts.
I'll second it. Further discussion? Okay, I'll put it this way, it's not our funds. We were asked to look at it maybe like a little bit financially. You don't really have a committee in this town that looks at. In some cases you do for special things. I mean, planning certainly looks at, and ZBA look at a lot of plans, designs, they critique it. But you don't really have a committee that says, well, we like the idea of the project, but based on this guy's a contractor and this guy is an engineer or an architect, they say don't do this or that. More than a little bit financial. I have a problem with building something with the drainage, but if that's the issue, but if the design includes, dropping a lot of gravel in there, pipes and so forth might not be necessary. If we just don't have real confirmation. That's what concerns me. That court, though, did last See, Paul Bowser said he had tennis lessons there when he was a kid. I don't know that the court was the same court, but Sue Woodworth said that the court spent their entire time she's worked here in that city. So, however, with these drainage issues, sometimes they just pop up and it could have happened in the last 5. So you might get a few years out of it, you might get 30 or 40 years out of it. The good news is it hasn't, I didn't notice it unleveling the court, that's a word. It's pulled apart a bit, it hasn't shifted.
So, and again, so I'm not trying to convince you one way or another. But if those courts get to the point where they're risking somebody's getting injured, we'll have to close. Because I, don't want to knowingly have a trip hazard for somebody playing tennis, things of that nature. My impression is when the crack started, that's when the water is infiltrated. I mean, if these courts are 25 years old, I don't think they owe you a darn thing.
Could also be that there was a tension crack. The water went in, instead of coming down the hill subsurface and getting underneath. Could have gone into a crack that wasn't patched in time.
Right.
And then swelled with freezing and
Right.
thawing and then,
Right.
but it's a wide crack. Now, it doesn't mean that the crack itself was that wide. They may have chiseled or jackhammered it out to make a better steel.
But once the crack is there and once water starts infiltrating
It only gets worse.
subsurface, it gets worse. So, I'm confident that we will construct these tennis courts and they'll last 25 years.
It's funny, I was talking to my oldest daughter, who's gonna be 46, about these squats.
46.
And she remember playing on them and said, they were always crack, I was playing on them. But I'm playing crack. No, she didn't say that. She said that you can't have a trip and fall hazard.
I mean, I played as a kid a good bit. I played a few years in high school. I think it's fairly common they separate. I don't really remember a lot of them separating so badly that you'd have like elevation changes where you plant wrong. So,
I mean, I played on a nice court and I felt like I was gonna do a face plant regardless of crack or not. However, you have to go in there a couple times to look at the cracks. This is actually, it's a nice place for a tennis court.
It is.
yeah,
Maybe a couple things in the view I'd like to see cleaned up, but other than that, it would be really nice to be up there and have my kids down on the playground. Once they're old enough to not have me right there, and then just, a little bit of, even just a badminton racket. To keep some physical agility in place.
That hill that faces the train tracks,
Mhm.
that's stable, right? There's no concern about that hill on the backside.
On the playground side, they have a retaining wall. I don't know if it goes around that way, but I think the MBTA would have had an issue if there was anything. I don't think they could, if a lot of erosion happened, I think it probably caused a derailment.
I think given the nature of the funding and the assurances we have that if something goes seriously sideways, that we can kind of get out of this, I think I'm now more comfortable with.
You know what, one of the other benefits is that if they ever wanted to eliminate the one at Grays for parking, or even if they were gonna shut it to do a rehabilitation down there. This double court can keep what it has, absorb everything that goes to Grays and then some. Based on the, looking at the scheduled hours plus the assumed, random walk-up play that occurs. So it's a nicer spot, even though the other one's near the beach, being up on the hill down there. It's nicer than the ones in Duxbury. I mean, they're nice and well maintained, but it's a nicer spot up there.
Duxbury just did some courts at the high school over. I gotta see what my kids have to say about how they are.
All right, so, Chris, you have any comments on the courts?
I have zero strong feelings either way, so no comments.
Well, he's not gonna argue for or against, so. Let's put it to a vote. All those in favor?
Michael, I.
Wayne, I.
Keith, aye.
Chris, aye.
All right, motion passes. I thought that was gonna be my no vote for the year, and it was until now.
Are we still on reconsideration?
Oh, boy.
We had a conversation when we voted those vehicles in particular, that as discussions went forward, there would be an opportunity tonight, I think, to revisit that at least to a certain extent. And I think there was some indication that there was an interest in at least continuing the conversation.
Yeah, I said I would put it on the agenda, and I said if anyone asks for it any other time before it's too late, I would call me.
Is it too late?
Not too late. What I would say is that last night, I think during the selectmen's meeting, one or two members of the board did mention their concern about funding with regards to the schools. They voted for it anyway because, and I think the sentiment was, we haven't heard anything that changes the situation. So if you want to continue the discussion, we can have that under this agenda item. We don't have to make a motion.
I don't know that I have a lot of new information to add, other than to say that the concerns that I anticipated having based on what were 2 weeks ago, rumors about the extent of the money being needed for the schools, have not abated based on what we've heard from the schools. And I continue to have some pretty strong reservations about whether all 4 of those trucks, which as best I can tell is regrettably the lowest of the low hanging, the lowest hanging fruit. I am concerned about whether those are.
If they don't cut enough, they're gonna have to raise and appropriate. So they just bypass free cash. Is that correct?
They can ask for free cash.
But would free cash even have enough?
But again, free cash right now, if everything were to be approved as we sit here today, with the warrant that was drafted, there's $1,013,000 left. I would suggest to the board and the finance committee, as I mentioned earlier, free cash is not an appropriate funding source for an ongoing school funding issue. And whether I don't want to speak for the FinCom and the board of selectmen at this point, so I don't know how that would
Yeah, so
feel.
we haven't been before the FinCom. I mean, you're hearing, pre-hearing. The other thing is we can also re-vote it on the floor.
Right.
Show responsibility. Hey, we thought this was the best project or the best recommendation at the time, given the way things are going. And that way we can maybe control which of the projects we withhold for you.
If we defer a truck and the cheapest, so on average, and I'm just saying this on average, I put it in my memo. I want to say, because there's a gap, if there's been there's been on average a 10% increase in cost every year for the acquisition of the truck. So you had 10%, $20-ish thousand. And then the exhaust for that truck is going to increase. We don't know yet, but we've been told because it's manufactured between $5,000 and $20,000. So you're looking at 25 to 40 grand in additional costs to buy one next year. And that was, I think, a very persuasive argument about why the board support.
I think that's all fair enough, and I'm happy to leave this for another time between now and the 11th, but I am gonna continue to say, as I have, and probably not for the last time, that I am uncomfortable, given what we're hearing, not just about this year, but about the likely short to medium term forecast, with, regardless of the individual merits of being in the position to say yes to everything. And because I have a seat in this room, that to me is the most, it's not ideal, but it is the most obvious target, and it is going to continue to concern me between now and the 11th, unless we are able to find significant adjustments to make this a sustainable growth rate for the whole thing. Yeah, that's right. I can be done with that for a minute.
Turn it off, right? Boom, I'm done.
Just record myself, play it back in a couple weeks.
No, I think it's good to be thinking like that. If we weren't, it would be a sign that we were just being reckless. And I don't think we're trying to be reckless. I think we're doing this to solve the problem with the least cost as we see it, and just something out in the periphery that says this may not be the right way. We might want to temper our approach a bit. We should consider that. I just think we should probably hold until we know we have a clearer vision of what that is. So we can easily say right now, from an operations perspective and a financial perspective, the truck for $180,000 is the easiest one to let go and pay the least penalty for sticking our heads in the, not sticking our heads in the sand, but all the costs add up on it are like a late fee, right? So that one accrues the smallest late fee, but it may not be enough. I don't want to lose two. And I know Mr. Bowser would like the two most expensive ones as priority.
Yep.
So if we were to shed something, we have to talk about whether it's the smaller truck, the medium-sized truck, the smaller and the medium. You know, it's,
Mama bear, Papa bear, gold.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just continue to emphasize that given the two seats that I hold from those seats, I am gonna continue to be pressing to look for ways to make this something that looks more sustainable in the short to medium run, given what we know about the other issues. And I appreciate that maybe this is not the best way to do that, and I am largely persuaded by the arguments that are on this particular point on their own. The context, I'm still a little nervous.
you have any thoughts on that, Chris?
No, I mean, I'd love to be able to know more about the situation with the schools, but that's a conversation for another day.
Good luck.
What about you, Wayne?
Yeah, that's my understanding. It's a bit of a black hole, so I don't want to speak out of turn.
Well, I think the needs of the DPW have been ignored for a number of years. Yeah. I wasn't crazy about quad trucks to begin with, but it's needed. You got the money.
And
Yeah,
any other
most of
method, any other method of handling this is gonna cost us a lot more.
Well, if we leased 180,000, it's not gonna be a huge hit over, but still.
I don't think we can
Why-
add
why-
another lease
why-
this year, so I think it's what Carol was saying in the last meeting.
Right.
The town accountant, we're really kind of, we have to shed a lease or two before we start using new leases.
I agree with that 100% because with the lease payments, 780,000 a year, I think, something like that. Yeah, I don't want to keep climbing, so. 180,000, I don't think it'll break the town. It's not gonna save the schools. And you can't, I agree with Keith, you can't throw free cash money
No.
at the school because that's just,
I loathe the idea of raising taxes,
I do too.
but if we lose these trucks because they want free cash for the schools, next year, they're gonna, when we don't have as much free cash, they're gonna be like, what do we do now? Well, you either really need to cut your budget or you need to adjust the opinions of the town to increase their taxes.
I think the town has historically always supported the schools. So if we have to go for a tax increase to support the school. I think we find a favorable vote.
All right. We settle on that for the time being. We know where we stand. Okay, and the business at hand, the main business is meeting minutes, and Keith, if you wanna take on, yeah,
So all you need to do is just power these down, just leave them on the, and, use, I'll leave this here with you, just power this off. When you are,
thank you, sir.
so I'll.
We actually have to end it and save it to the cloud.
You do, it'll ask you to go and save it to the cloud, you end it. It would save to, I've already said this to save it to the cloud, so it should do. that
Okay,
for
they
you.
had to do that at the end. All
It
right.
should be all set. The door downstairs, I'll make sure locks.
I don't know what time he leaves, but last time I thought we were gonna be at this for like an hour and a half, and it took us 20 minutes to go through 4 sets.
Right.
So we're a little picky, but we're not that bad.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. thank you.
Yeah,
Good
well,
evening.
thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye. All right, moving on to the minutes for the 7th. I've handed out printouts to those in the room. It's a lot of information. Excuse me, just give me your edits. I'll mark them down. It's a little tough when you've got a couple people working in multiple documents and then trying to bring the information all together into one. So let me know what you're finding.
Is Opachinsky Fields a formal title anywhere? And if
If I go to
so,
the first page too.
yeah, can we,
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
it's
why-
Fields Complex.
yeah, just throw out, because there's a couple of us.
What I'll do is I'll take a day or two to step away from it.
Yeah.
edits and they'll have sharper eyes.
Mhm.
I've got one minor formatting issue when we're ready for it.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's pretty much every time my name is mentioned, it's my first and last name. Everybody else is Mr. or Ms., Mrs., whatever it might be.
You know why that happens, Chris? Because you're so quiet. It's always Chris Breelman the first time, and then it's Mr. Breelman after that. So anytime you're in the notes, it's just assume.
Gotcha.
Oh,
All right.
so, I'll try to go through here and find where that happens.
There's a couple of Mr. Breelmans later on.
All right. If that's the logic, that makes complete sense to me.
You see where the second and third ones are happening like that?
I'm looking at it now.
Because I've got you on the sheet, this set, I should say, in the third sheet. Motion by Chris Breelman. This is for the Obuchinsky Field well replacement. I don't see anything before that, so if there is. Because I don't count it in the those in attendance list.
Yeah, that does make sense, and I'm seeing where I'm on the document later as Mr. Breelman. So, all right, concern withdrawn.
I'll keep looking for those as I go through. I really shouldn't look at that eclipse.
It is.
Just kidding. Left my reading glasses. Yep.
I am satisfied with the March 7th set.
Same here.
I will move pending discussion, the
Yeah, we might,
capital planning committee approve minutes as amended for the meeting in March 7th, 2024.
minutes as of, yeah. Can you also say with
Yeah,
edits? Because, I mean, we amended it now, but as I'm going through finding those, I'm like trying to nothing structural or factual, but just like, punctuation.
the term for that, with style edits as appropriate. In the
Did we have a
opinion of
second?
the chair.
I did, I thought so. Okay, all those in
Second by
favor-
Chris.
What?
Wayne B.
Sorry, I thought you were still needing for a second, but
All those in favor, Heath, aye.
Michael, I.
Wayne, I.
Chris,
Okay. Now on to the 14th. Here. 3 pages. Oh.
Thank you. This has nothing to do with the minutes, but is, Paul looking at maybe getting that transmission replaced or checking on getting it ducks in a row in case
I
the,
think based on the delivery times, if you wanted to keep that truck on the road, I'll have to double check because
especially if the four trucks goes out or any of the.
one's already decommissioned. It's already done. And I don't think it was the one that had the transmission. I really couldn't tell you right now. I've got it marked down somewhere.
We just add the Obuchinsky field formatting to this set as well. First long bullet point on page 2.
Yep. Funny, Mike.
Mr. Ember claimed that Mr. Breelman would be.
Yeah, that was a good touch. That was a fun moment
Right.
between the two of you and figuring that out.
Right.
You have fun on capital planning, Mike. except for all the work we do.
Another good argument for that, somebody to fill that announcement you've made. 7,000 consecutive meetings.
If you like to have fun Wednesday nights in Kingston, join the capital plan. We'll be having an adult touch a truck event.
The third bullet point on page 2, the wording of the second time the sentence begins with your name, I can't quite parse. You know,
Mr. Ember would be more comfortable with the project if it waited a year
okay.
with time for an independent third-party engineer to
Have a
Oh,
look.
to have
Yeah.
a look and determine
Okay.
if a drainage solution needs to be included in the rehabilitation plan.
Mhm. I'm gonna move pending discussion, the capital planning committee approve its minutes of the March 14th, 2024 meeting, subject to style adjustments made by.
Go ahead, Chris.
Taking that as a second. All those in favor?
Michael, I.
Wayne, I.
Heath, aye.
Chris, I.
Now, this one, Chris, you don't already have the first edit I found, because you have the version from before I printed. The date on the top is wrong.
Man, now I've got nothing to add now.
All right, go back
I
to
was
sleep.
waiting. I was like, I found it. Yes.
First time, I think Carol McCoy comes up, it's Ms. McCoy, so I may change that.
When we look at the existing lease payments section on the third page, can we unify the formatting of the dollar amount? So,
Are we missing something here?
no, it looks different from the lease payments look different.
I think that's probably the language off the warrant article.
Okay, in that.
So, and we're trying to capture the motion as
Which
accurately
one?
as it was made or may have been made.
Perfect. What's wrong?
No, that was intentional on my part. I don't normally like this format, by the way, the upon a motion is something I think one of the former admin for the finance committee used to use. And I don't typically use it for like adjournments and so forth, but when you're capturing
Yeah.
something like this that's significant.
I just meant where the dollar amount went, but yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's based on the way Keith
Right.
frames up.
Appreciate the
warrant.
change of format to the bold and underlined types.
I think anytime you talk about a dollar amount, it's got more than 3 zeros and it should probably be bolded for the sake of the public. So not like you're trying to hide it.
Bottom page 4 is future meetings. Move the apostrophe to after the S. Worse, a language teacher.
How much of this grammar is actually exists in the Latin language? Any of it?
The,
Certainly the sentence structure is all different.
yeah, but they didn't really have punctuation, even to the point of, they didn't write with, they didn't really have lowercase letters.
Yeah.
They're just all, because we don't think they read silently. I think it was all reading out loud, and so you can just, the language is picked up.
True.
I printed a reading once for one of my classes, written like that, all caps, no spaces, no punctuation. See how they would react. They were not pleased with the properly punctuated.
Everything was probably like a public announcement or an announcement in the Senate or something like that.
Pending any discussion, I'll move the capital planning committee approve its minutes of the March 27th, 2024 meeting as amended, subject to minor style adjustments at the discretion of the chair.
I'll second that, give Wayne a break. All those in favor, Heath, aye.
Michael,
Wayne, I.
Chris, I.
Great.
And if we want to talk about Latin some more, the Roman Empire in general, I've got all night.
Mr. Breelman, I discovered one of the last times I spoke to him on the phone, is a historian.
excellent.
And,
Well, an amateur historian.
well, okay, we talked a while about history, because I am also a nerd. Okay. Maybe we can certainly do that sometime. Together tomorrow. Go crash the historical commission's meeting, take over. You guys don't go back far enough. All right, future meetings. The next meeting is to be determined. It'll be determined about whether or not we need a reconsideration or whether we are called to do something else. However, there's a FinCom meeting on the 17th probably, and I intend to be presenting there. Michael will be there, so I will post for, well, not a joint meeting, but a meeting for us to appear at their meeting, just in case anybody happen to be walking through the building or calling in accidentally, we don't get an open meeting law complaint.
17th is what time, 7 or 6?
Yeah, I'm not positive because they sometimes have different start times. This one's gonna be the hard one. Annual town meeting has been well, at least before we knew it was rescheduled, but the annual town meeting is the May the 11th at 9 a.m. Still be held at the Kingston Intermediate School. Anybody have anything else about future meetings? Any agenda items, anything they want to talk about upcoming?
All good.
I have some ideas about load balancing the next few years worth of capital. That's going to depend on what passes this year at town meeting. Simply because next year does not look like it's a crazy year in terms of projects, but the following 2 years do. And I think maybe some of that stuff needs to get shifted before we take a bigger whack on the pricing on those things too. But if we have to move trucks next year instead of this year, we just have the same problems ongoing. So I'm going to be asking around for some ideas from some of the big spenders in town and see what they have to say. Member comments, questions, concerns, any?
I think I've heard enough of those.
You've heard enough comments?
No, I said, I think I've made enough of them. I'll move the Kingston Capital Planning Committee adjourn at 6:12 PM.
Second.
All those in favor, Keith, aye.
Michael,
Wayne, I.
Chris, I.
Have a good meeting tonight, Chris.